Today, we're going to teach you how to build a lean-to shelter, American style. Before we get to the lean-to building, a quick recap of the rules for this survival challenge. Hywel and I have to use the exact same tools. We cannot see each other's videos until they're both completely done. We make sure that we are doing this legally and we're abiding by all the rules. So if you're going to attempt any of these challenges, make sure that you have a guardian with you, you have a battle buddy with you, make sure you're practicing safe techniques and you're abiding by all of the local rules and regulations. That's about it for that, so let's get going. So the first thing you want to think about when considering your shelter is the 5 W's. Who, what, where, why, and how. Now I like the 5 W's because it is 5, just like the big 5, so it's just easy to remember. In thinking of the who, what, where, why, and how, you have who's the shelter for, how many people do you need to fit into it, and do you have gear you need to fit into it. The what is what are you going to build the shelter with, what materials do you need. That's going to factor when you're scouring the woods and looking for a place. Where, obviously you want to build it in a safe place, not on the inside bend of a river where it could flood suddenly, not on a game trail, not anywhere there are small pests. You don't want to be too close to stagnant water because then it will be really buggy. There's a lot of things to think about. Also look up, make sure there are no dead limbs or branches or tops of trees that could fall on you. So the where is very important. And then why? Why are you building the shelter? Is it primarily to protect you from wind? Is it a rainy place? Is it a very sunny place? Is it snowing? Is it cold? There's a whole lot of factors. And then the last one is how. How are you going to build it? And that really speaks to what kind of build. Is it going to be an A-frame, a lean-to, a debris hut? What kind of material are you finding? What kind of space do you have? What kind of time do you have? What kind of tools do you have? So the 5 W's really help you figure out exactly what you need relatively quickly. So the first question that I need to answer is, who is my shelter going to be for? Just me. Simple. Where? Well, this is the spot. My why is it's pretty windy and it gets cold at night this time of year. First thing that I want to do here in the spot I've chosen is use my feet, not my hands. My feet are protected to clear a lot of this out and make sure there's nothing underneath that is going to make this a terrible night for me. This is plenty of room for me. The primary thing you do in your shelter is sleep. There's no point in making a big grandiose shelter that you can stand up and walk around in because your body heat, since you cannot have a fire in your shelter, your body heat is what's primarily going to keep that shelter warm. The bigger it is, the less likely you're going to be able to heat it. I've been collecting long, straight pieces of wood for my shelter. Most of them are relatively rotten, and I'm not confident that they'll hold all of the weight of the entire roof. And that one beam that goes across that holds everything really needs to be sturdy. So I'm gonna take all the gooey, wet stuff off, make sure there's nothing hiding under it I don't want in my shelter. I have confidence this will keep my shelter from falling on me. We don't need those. What we need is the cordage. More, Hywel. So right now I'm just making a basic windshield and rain shield. This is what is primarily going to protect me from rain and wind. This is just the base. This is not a completed shelter by any means. I've been collecting birch bark. There are so many fallen birch trees around here, and birch bark is great to use as almost like shingles. So we're going to do that as our first layer.
Earlier when I was cleaning out the inside of where my shelter would be, I made a big pile of that debris. And now that debris is going to be used to help insulate the top of this. The more we have stacked on this, the better it will protect from wind and especially rain. I have a layer of birch bark in a shingle formation, so you start at the bottom and you overlap as you go up. Then I have a couple layers of green branches with leaves, and now on top of all of that I'm going to throw all of this detritus or debris. So it's going to be a lean-to debris hut, sort of. And the roof is sort of a sloped, rounded shape to help shed water. And once it's all done and packed down, it should keep me completely dry.
Now what I need the rest of these for is one of the things people forget the most. That ground is very damp. I cleared off the top coat of leaves and the ground underneath was very damp. And I don't want to sleep on these. And the ground, even when it's warmer, saps us of most of our heat. It's when you're in contact with something colder than you, the conduction sucks the heat out of you. The ground is colder than you, and it takes an awful lot of body heat to heat that ground up. So instead of trying to heat the ground up, we insulate. Insulation is nothing more than air pockets. That's how your coats work. That's how down jackets and blankets work. The pockets of air warm up and then send the heat back to you. So the more of these we can layer the ground with, the more insulation we will have from the ground and the drier we will stay. actually coming from that way. That's why I built it this way, the opening away from the wind. And it gets a little hillier up there, so I know there's protection from wind that way. And these are designed to go in feet first. It's at a slight, it's actually pretty cozy. It's at a slight angle, so my head is elevated, which is a much healthier way to sleep, especially if you're somebody who has GERD or heartburn. That is the worst feeling, when your head is lower than your feet when you're trying to sleep. So keep that in mind. I have a stack of really dry wood that I had been collecting as I was getting things for the shelter. And I have it right here where it's actually under, so I know, and I'll continue to fill this as I roam about camp. That way I know if there's a rainstorm, I'm not staying dry alone. Wood for my fire is staying dry, which is important. This is perfect for me. This is a temporary shelter. This is not something that you'd want to be living in for weeks. This is the shelter. It took, I think, about 2 hours to build this. That's not too long, but you don't want to spend too much more time on a shelter than that when you also have to think about a fire, finding water, food. And on that note, I chose this spot for several reasons. I know my shelter is near water, food source, it's protected from above, it's insulated from below, it's not facing the prevailing wind, and it's kind of comfy. The need for a shelter is for you to have a warm, safe, dry place to sleep in or to get in out of the elements. It's not supposed to be a log cabin or a mansion unless you are never coming back and that's where you want to live forever. I would also get more pine boughs to cover up these sides as well. I'd probably weave some together and make myself a little door right here. But yeah, I think for now this is pretty good. I would sleep in this, and I might. Night night. So I felt it was really important to touch on this. Whenever you are out in the woods, no matter what, lost or just hiking, just always be scanning the area. It's interesting, you learn a lot of things. Like here, I realized that there are large bear in these woods. Scary, big, giant bears that would probably eat us if they found us. You can see, yes, I'm touching poop. It's actually in the woods. When you're teaching about it, it's scat. But look at this. These fibers, these are all like the fibrous crushed bones of a human or some large animal. This bear was, I don't know if I want to be out here anymore. It's a big pile of, what? Horse poop?